Attorney, and thank you as always to city staff for being available before and after our meetings should any of the citizens here have questions. A reminder to turn off any electronic devices that may be distracting today, and note that all of our city council agendas, minutes, videos are available on our city's website, as well as I mentioned earlier, streaming live on Facebook. So we will begin, as we do at every city council meeting, with an invocation. Public Safety Chaplain Jim Coyle will do that for us, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, City staff. A lot of buzz going around in the city right now. It's a great time of year. So, Lord, I just pray that you would guide the decisions that are being made today and the conversations that need to take place. I just pray for unity and a continued blessing from your hand over the leadership in our community. And I pray all these things in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'd like to invite those who will be a part of our first presentation today. This will be our fiscal year 2023 annual audit. Mark Sewell and Aaron Calderon from RSM are here. Thank you, gentlemen. I'll recognize you.
Thank you for having us today. Like you said, my name is Mark Sewell. I'm an audit partner with RSM, and with me today is Aaron Calderon. He's served as the manager on the engagement. And so I think in front of you, you have the financial statements and our letter communicating certain things required by our standards to those charged with governance. We've summarized everything in a PowerPoint here. I'm not going to cover everything on the PowerPoint, but try to get the highlights to you and then allow you to ask any questions. And please interrupt us if you have any questions throughout. Probably the most important thing is that the audit is complete, and we've issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which includes the various opinion units within there. We issue lots of different opinions on kind of each column within there. The only thing is we do refer to other auditors that audited the library. So that clean opinion, there's no other level of assurance you want. It's consistent with previous years. Since you receive you spent almost $100 million worth of federal assistance, we also do what we call a single audit, which we focus on the federal programs. Unmodified opinion on those programs we audited. We audited both the airport improvement program and then some of the coronavirus relief funds as well, which was a little over $40 million of total federal assistance there. Again, unmodified opinion, clean opinion, no other level of assurance you want. So if you take one thing away, that's all the very positive right there. And I'm going to skip around a little bit. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention is that within the financial statements, the city has always submitted that for a certificate in excellence in financial reporting to the Government Finance Officers Association. So they won that award for the previous year. Based off our review, we expect the city to continue to win that award, and I think they've had it for probably decades now. So very, very positive there. Second slide here is some of the information that we're required to report is kind of if there's any issues within accounting policies and practices. And you can kind of see based on the table, there's really no items to report. The only item that we're reporting here is that the city did adopt a new accounting standard, GASB 96, which really is just required the city to look at certain IT service arrangements and evaluate if it met certain criteria and put an asset and a liability on the financial statements if it met that criteria. Very similar to the lease adoption in the previous year, but this was for IT. No really issues in the adoption there to report except that it was properly adopted. Similarly, the financial statements we're required to report what we think are significant estimates. So when management prepares financial statements, they include various estimates within there. I'm not going to read all this detail to you except to say that there's estimates, and we've included here the city's policy, the way that they go about estimating that estimate, and then our work that we did on that. So we believe all the estimates included are appropriately and are reasonable. And we kind of list these out so as you're monitoring the financial performance of the city, you know that there's some judgments made in some of these accounts. So I'll just kind of highlight the ones, and if you have any questions, stop me. the useful life of capital assets, all the self-insurance claims liability, the projection of what those actually are going to be paid out, the fair value of investments, the actuarial assumptions that go into your OPEB plan, the actuarial assumptions that go into your pension plan, allowance for doubtful accounts, and then the unbilled utilities, and then the discount rate used in the adoption of GASB 96. So lots of stuff there. Again, this is just, we communicate that we did have an emphasis of matter within our opinion, but just to say that a new accounting standard was adopted this year. The other thing we're required to report is if we have any actual audit adjustments as a result of our procedures, which then we evaluate those to see if there's any control items to report as a result of those. And then we also kind of refer to this as an audit tool, is if there's any differences that are not material, we accumulate them and make sure that they don't add up to be material. And management looks at those as well to make sure that they're not material. A lot of times those are a result, we're sampling and we're projecting errors using statistics. And so not necessarily want you to record those. It's just we add everything up just to make sure we don't get to a material amount. Next couple slides, I'm not going to go through these, but there were a couple adjustments this year that we did have. And I'll touch on those in a couple more slides. These are the summary of the corrected adjustments. And then these are the summary of the uncorrected misstatements that are not recorded that we do not think are material to the financial statements. The majority of the stuff is timing differences from one fiscal year to the next. So when we did have the audit adjustments, we did evaluate those. A couple of those we did report as a deficiency. Really, most of these are related to timing issues. So the first one is recognition of certain grants. So really what was happening is that for certain grants that there's a long period of time between when you incur the eligible cost for those and then you receive reimbursement is a long time. So the city had basically just recorded those more closely aligned to cash basis and not all the requirements. Those actually was an easy adjustment to make. The city recorded those amounts. I think going forward, it's an easy thing to correct. Self-insurance liabilities was kind of an over-accrual of certain self-insurance liabilities there based off confidence levels that the city received from their actuary. It just was outside what we call the reasonable range, and so they reduced that. Again, an entry that was made to correct those pretty easily, and in knowing what that reasonable range is to correct those going forward should be a pretty straightforward process too. The last one is a schedule of expenditures of federal awards, which really goes in line with the first one, is it's just when it was reported, the timing of reporting those expenditures on the schedule of expenditures. So really related to a timing issue there. This next slide is summarizing really observations about the audit process. And so you can see everything in the no section here, which is good. Usually when that happens, that means that we had a disagreement with auditing procedures or accounting requirements, or we encountered some significant difficulties, which we did not. So when we requested information, management provided that very timely, very forthcoming, very easy audit, very good audit client to work with. So no issues to report there either. Not going to go through this slide entirely either, but what I'll say is that when we do work really closely with management, but ultimately we're independent of the city and we report to council. And so this is just kind of summarizing our shared responsibility for independence. So we have lots of policies and procedures in place to make sure that we don't impair our independence, and we get that information from the city to make sure we don't as well. And with that being said, the only other thing attached to here is the management representation letter that management provided us to at the end of the audit. And we incorporate that within this presentation as well. So I'll pause and see if there's any questions. If not, that's a summary of our presentation.
Councilmember Meyer.
Thanks for the presentation. Can you go back to page 5 or 6?
Is your microphone on? I'll make sure. Thank you.
There we go. Can you go back to page, I think it was 5 or 6, there was a date, oh, there it is, October 11, on the previous slide?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. We have, okay. I just wasn't sure what communication was on the 11th, but that was basically your engagement letter. The
Yeah,
time.
our engagement letter that sets out the responsibilities at the beginning of the audit, that summarizes what we'll tell you at the end and what we'll tell you immediately if we come across. So we don't have any of those immediate items, which would have been, related to fraud or anything like that. So, no problem.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, gentlemen. We'll go ahead and move on to our next presentation.
Thank you.
This is an update on actions regarding the Hy-Vee First Avenue closure. We feel as a council it's important that we continue to receive daily updates on this. Those of you who've been following the developments of Hy-Vee's decision to close our First Avenue store, the city is treating this very much like we would any unexpected emergency, which I appreciate City Manager Pomerantz and Director Pratt's willingness to bring us our update today.
Thank you very much, Mayor and council members, members of the public. As the mayor said, we were asked to report on actions that the city's taken, communications the city's taken since our actual initial visit with Hy-Vee regarding the closure of the First Avenue store, and that began around a year ago. So I'm just going to have a number of items I just wanted to show the council and make sure everyone was aware. And I say that also knowing that the mayor and city council members have been involved in this discussion since it began, which has been extremely helpful to us, and particularly in recent times and over the last week or so. But it's really been a process of all of us being involved and reacting with great concern over the potential for this store closing. So I'll go back to 2023, and on our timeline, we have a number of key issues that occurred. So on May 1, just over a year ago, we did have a meeting discussion with Hy-Vee corporate regarding their intent to close what we'll call the First Avenue store. That was met with great concern at that time. We had elected officials involved, some staff officials, and in our discussions with Hy-Vee, we were very clear that this was going to be a really significant negative blow to our community, and that in our minds, closure of the store is unacceptable. So that's where we began the discussion. We then got to work through our economic development staff, and we began researching the property itself, which is obviously the Hy-Vee store on First Avenue. But we found out that Hy-Vee didn't own the store, and that's a common practice where stores such as companies like Hy-Vee will sell the real estate to another investor, and they will lease that real estate from that investment group. So we then determined, and with the help of Hy-Vee, that we needed to speak with a Bill Flynn, who was Senior Vice President at Net Lease Capital Advisors, who was the property owner's principal consultant and representative. So that's who we were to deal with. And one of the reasons why that was important, when we talked to Hy-Vee, we asked the question, what can we do to help you keep this store open? Because the closure would be a very sad and difficult time for the city of Cedar Rapids. And so they did help us and put us in touch with, again, Mr. Flynn. We then contacted Mr. Flynn, again representing the owners of the property, and Mr. Flynn gave us a document called Opportunity and Summary Analysis for the property. So what we determined through our discussions with Hy-Vee as well as the property owner, that the lease was about to expire. And so that was certainly one of the reasons why Hy-Vee was considering whether they would keep the store open or not. In our discussions with Hy-Vee, we talked about what we as the city could do to assist Hy-Vee and to make sure that this store stayed open. And one of the first issues that was brought up by Hy-Vee was the lease needed to be renewed, and they asked the city if the city could help attain favorable terms for Hy-Vee to reduce costs to the company. And so we didn't get involved in any negotiations regarding the lease itself. We never received that level of detail, but we did have a series of meetings with the owners of the property, again represented by Mr. Flynn and now a Mr. Horvath. We emphasized to the owners that this was a very important site for Cedar Rapids, absolutely critical to the community, to the neighborhood, to Cedar Rapids as a whole, and we stated very clearly Cedar Rapids' strong desire to keep that store open. Again, they are the owners of the property negotiating with Hy-Vee. They initially had a series of questions for us about potential for investment of the property. And so some of that didn't have anything to do with the grocery store. They just asked, would adjacent college be interested in this property for a dormitory or for some other kind of use? They asked about other kinds of grocery stores that might be interested eventually. They had that discussion. The representatives asked about other retail or office that might be appropriate, and we emphasized very clearly and very strongly to them that the city had invested really through our tax increment district well over 22 years ago in the upgrade of this facility, and that the community was invested in having this Hy-Vee at this location, and that it would be difficult to find another tenant. We're not real estate brokers or agents, but we know there's other nearby properties that have been empty for a while as well. And so we really emphasized and pushed hard on the concept that we needed that negotiation to occur, and that they needed to work with Hy-Vee and make this facility make sense to all parties for the future. So those lease negotiations continued. I'm now in July of 23, and we had a number of conversations with again, this representative, emphasizing the importance of this project to the community. Around September of 23, September 13th, we were informed by the representatives they did reach a lease in principle with Hy-Vee. So, that was not an absolute, that renewal for 5 years, but they told us that it looked good for a 5-year renewal, and that stay posted. We hope to have some good news coming. Again, these discussions are not necessarily with Hy-Vee, they're with their landlord, their representative. But we thought that was extremely positive. We did other things to involve ourselves in the process as we got to this point that I just mentioned. So one of those was we met with the representatives as well. So this wasn't just emails or phone calls, or we actually went and met with the representatives. We went to the International Shopping Center Convention in Las Vegas, and we met those individuals at that time, and again had similar discussions about the vitality of the neighborhood, the support of the neighbors for this store, the importance of having this active and critical resource of food through this grocery store in this location. And then while we were receiving updates back and forth, we had some good news to report. And so I'll just quote from the information that we had. But on November 15th, again, we're in 2023 still, I am pleased to announce that we have successfully extended the lease with Hy-Vee for another 5 years. Your work and support behind the scenes made a significant difference in getting the deal done. Bill Flynn, representative, the owner of the facility. So, you know, we worked behind the scenes. This was a process which we had lots of input on. The mayor, council members, various city staff, all involved in this discussion. And in this case, we were very excited to see kind of this deal culminate with this good news from Mr. Flynn that they had reached a 5-year agreement. So those are some of the actions and reactions, numerous, that took place. Again, working initially with Hy-Vee, listening to their needs, working with the owners of the building, and getting to this point of November 15th, saying we'd received this final notice of the 5-year lease being culminated. And then we're going to skip all the way to 2024, and here we are at May 9th, and Mayor O'Donnell received a very unfortunate phone call from Hy-Vee stating that they were closing the First Avenue store. So I'd say that the look on the mayor's face was one of disappointment and shock, because we had been working through this entire process all along, and no one anticipated that we would just receive this notice from one of the legislative vice presidents informing us of this failure. We had other phone calls. We're very close with our neighboring communities, and so we had an in-depth phone call with Mayor Quentin Hart from the city of Waterloo, and then we also had information about the Davenport store closing. None of that, you know, there is some relationship there as far as just jointly expressing our concerns, but our focus is on our store and our needs. But we also were, I guess, quite interested in what was being closed in Davenport and in Waterloo, and there seemed to be a similarity in the stores that were being closed. At any rate, we then planned on contacting Hy-Vee, but we decided to call them. So on Friday, May 10th, I did talk to the regional director at Hy-Vee, and we had a good conversation, but no difference in outcome. So, I mean, the conversation revolved around operating margins and concerns for the financial viability of that particular store. There was, I think, an expression of support for the community and for the other stores and the impact of Hy-Vee on the community. So it was a conversation of what needs to be done to look forward. In the meantime, on Monday, the 13th, the mayor received a text from Hy-Vee saying that the president of Hy-Vee and other officials wished to speak with the mayor, and that conversation did take place yesterday around midday. And we were also informed by, for instance, the city of Waterloo that they called Waterloo as well, the same individuals, and had a conversation. So it's, at this point, we are still talking with Hy-Vee, but we also want to be as proactive as possible. And in fact, we have been, as I've said, very proactive over the last year. But it's truly a time for being proactive, because we recognize that the city, I know every council member the conversation with each council member, and of course the mayor, very much involved, deeply upset about this information. So what can we do to help the neighborhood? What can we do to potentially keep the store open? What can we do to look at new opportunities as well? And so all those things are being studied. And with that, I'll turn this over to Jennifer Pratt, our Community Development Director, who's been involved in a number of these discussions with not just Hy-Vee, but with the neighborhood.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, just that underlying theme that access to food, access to pharmacy is so critical in our core neighborhoods. So again, some of the proactive steps we have already taken is we did complete a grocery market study, and that was completed back in September of 2023. It really is studying, especially focused on the core area of the community, identifying where's the strength of market. And again, what this becomes is a tool when we go out to promote and to attract that type of retail to our community. We also were just about ready to launch our First Avenue East micro area plan. This has been a council priority. It is something that we had already scheduled to launch tomorrow at the development committee meeting. And because of the news with Hy-Vee last week, we decided to accelerate that first stakeholder meeting, and we actually will be holding that at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Again, really wanting to identify what are those immediate needs that we know are going to be out there, and what are the resources that are already available so we can start helping match that. And I will just say, I don't think I need to tell council how amazing this community is, because as soon as we reach out to people, we have people interested in trying to be part of the solution. So again, another example of that. Just really quickly, that First Avenue East study area is shown here on the map. I would also just like to point out all of the public and private reinvestment that we've had in this core area, most recently with the Heights that we just did the ribbon cutting on, but also comments on First, the Commonwealth. We have an annual program for historic rehabilitation in this area. We also just had the expansion of the Eastern Iowa Health Care Center with their dental facility. We also have some really foundational nonprofits in the area who have been working on homes. So between Hope CDA as well as the Affordable Housing Network, there's been a lot of investment in homes in this area, as well as some exciting projects on the horizon with the Flourishing Neighborhood Index that is just kicking off, as well as a 15th Street Art Project to, again, help that walkability in the area.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. And the reason this is so important, in addition to just the continued development and redevelopment of our city, when we met with Hy-Vee, one of the things they emphasized, as I already said, was negotiations with their landlord and how the city could help in that. But also, they were highly concerned about the neighborhood. And so we informed those representatives at the time that not only are we making improvements, but we were committing ourselves to the continued development and redevelopment of this neighborhood and this area of our city. Some of our action steps, and this is all a work in progress, but we are working and communicating with Hy-Vee. We certainly have the goal of keeping the store open, but we also know that's going to be extremely difficult based on what we've been told by Hy-Vee. So we want to make sure that we look for areas and opportunities where Hy-Vee can support this particular community. So I don't want to go into all those details right now because Hy-Vee doesn't know about some of those areas, but we think there's certainly ways, whether it's transportation or whether it's support to receive groceries or get to other stores and back in a cost-free or very, very cost-effective manner. We're looking at different opportunities to try to help the residents. We think that's owed to the residents that have supported this store, but this will kind of mature. And one of the reasons we're bringing the group together to discuss is, not only what they would like to see in the future, but are there ideas from the community about ways that Hy-Vee could support this particular area of our city. Jennifer mentioned the grocery market study, and so that was complete in September of '23. So it wasn't done specifically for this store because we have a number of areas where we'd like to see new groceries expand, develop, but it was done at the same time because we wanted to make sure that in case there were areas where we had to further negotiate with Hy-Vee, we would have the data to do that. So that study continues, and the very, very important factor, this study will help us as we go next week to the International Shopping Center Convention. So we have several council members that will be joining us at that meeting. And having this study and the data is going to be important. And so there'll be, again, discussions about opportunities and needs for expansion. We'll certainly talk about the loss of the store, but most importantly, we'll talk about the needs of Cedar Rapids and the benefits of Cedar Rapids. And we do have at least one meeting set up with a grocery store. And so we're looking forward to that. And then we'll continue, as I said, to work with the residents. And we called this group together to hear from the residents, as I said, and to make sure that, what are the citizens of Cedar Rapids see as the need. Some of that is obvious, but there may be new insights and perspectives that we look forward to hearing and sharing that communication. So that will occur. We're involving others in that process. There'll be lots of opportunity for concerned members of the community, and particularly those that can help us, whether it's in Washington, D.C. or in Des Moines. We will appreciate whatever help we can get in the future after this group comes together and says what the need is and how we can all work together to help the neighborhood, which, as Jennifer said, is really the goal. With that, that's some of the steps we've taken, and just wanted to emphasize just how important this is to us and how seriously the mayor and city council members each have taken this from the beginning, not from Thursday, but over this last year that's brought us to this unfortunate point, but we also see a lot of potential for the future as well in this corridor as improvements continue to be made and invested in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, and thanks for the update, and I'm sure council has thoughts and questions if you're up for it. I would like to just reiterate, if you think there was shock on my face, there was another person who was equally or more so shocked too, and that was my first text after I got the call was literally 911 to Councilmember Todd, because Councilmember Todd was with me in that very first meeting a year ago. So Councilmember Todd, thank you for your efforts, again, not just this week, but you've been all in actually for decades.
From the beginning, yes.
Yeah, from the beginning. Do you have any thoughts to offer here?
Your Mayor, Your Honor, thank you. We were in a college district meeting, and you sent a text and it said 911. And, that doesn't happen often. But when it does happen, it demands an immediate response. Jeff, thank you and your team for the factual analysis of what happened. And I just wanted to say, in response to at least the city's efforts, we were asked by Hy-Vee last year to keep this quiet. And that was done particularly with an understanding of the trauma that it would cause to the neighborhood and to their store employees if they found out that Hy-Vee was even considering closing the store. And as a city, we're not exactly great at keeping secrets, but this is one that we did keep. And so that's why we were, in terms of economic development, these are sensitive issues, and we did a damn good job of keeping, at least doing our due diligence and doing what the other party asked us to do. I just wanted to point out too, there's a lot of discussion now, and so in order to get the Hy-Vee here to begin with, that was a 10-year process to get them to do what what they did do. But I found the old document, and really around that time, what we had did in terms of the city, we created a consolidated central urban renewal area, because at that time, we were doing a project for Hy-Vee, and the downtown YMCA, which was a nonprofit, was also building a building. And we had to, we tried to figure out a way to finance that. And what we did in terms of the total amount, it was $975,000. We helped with land, $376 for building construction. We had an $18,000 contingency, Anybody imagine that nowadays? And then some interim financing. And it was a little bit higher than typically because the cost to develop in the urban core was more than Hy-Vee going out and buying a farm field somewhere, a green field, and developing out there. So it was controversial back then. But in terms of looking back, it was the right thing to do. And I have confidence in the team and the leadership and getting to a point where we'll have some options.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Thoughts? Councilmember Van Orny.
Yeah, so again, I just want to thank my council colleagues certainly for their rapid support, strategizing, and just for how seriously they're taking this issue. In 2022, when I re-upped my council term, it wasn't sexy enough for many people then, but I identified the biggest issues facing our community was homelessness and food insecurity. And here we are again. It's come up during the derecho. It's come up now. We learned a lot from the derecho about how quickly the bottom can fall out and destabilize a community. And so a lot of the practices that you'll see in our strategic plans, certainly on development committee, talk about having walkable and accessible fresh foods, whether that's in a community garden, whether that's attracting employers and opportunities for fresh produce. And so here we are again. Now, what's probably most personally challenging for me, even though I do still have a walkable grocery store, which happens to be Hy-Vee, which happens to be the first place I was ever employed at 14, I was proud then to be one of those helpful smiles in every aisle, and I could not be more disappointed. I spend so much of my professional career in healthcare, even though that's not inherently a part of what I do, dealing with and supporting the food insecurity of our patients there. And so this issue is incredibly important to me. I know that, again, I was with Councilmember Todd during that meeting. I didn't know that's why he left, but it certainly makes sense. And we were talking about these exact things, talking about stabilizing that community. And so, we further reiterated that even with that Wednesday, just the day before at our goal setting session, further reiterated how important this exact topic was to this entire council, unanimously, not even a question talking about this. And so, to see Hy-Vee destabilize these communities with their actions is really concerning to me. I think personally, I feel like it's time for a better partner who understands the industry that they're in, and that's the industry of serving people. And I say that, and maybe it's a bit controversial, but I say that because they're divesting from, and honestly, I feel like they're abandoning the most complex neighborhoods in Davenport, Waterloo, and Cedar Rapids. So while our focus is going to be on Cedar Rapids, it does concern me that this is a trend that they have in Eastern Iowa. So there's going to be a lot of food insecurity issues that we're going to be working with our partners in this area to address. I also feel confident in my council colleagues, given the work, the discussion that we've had and that we will continue ongoing to take this seriously, to rapidly implement processes so that we don't leave anybody hanging, because we can't. And we are committed to not allowing that to happen, because that is what Cedar Rapidians deserve.
Thank you. Councilmember Poe.
Thank you, Mayor. To the representative of Hy-Vee, I will tell you, I stop at the First Avenue Hy-Vee probably twice a week, maybe 3 times a week. I feel safe every time I walk in the door. They're wonderful. The people there greet you. They know you're there. There's a police officer inside the store. There's oftentimes a police car outside the store. I've never once felt unsafe. And to me, it almost feels like an urban myth that this area isn't safe. I've never experienced that, ever, walking into that store, and I go into it quite a bit. So to that representative, I would say to you, I feel safe. And more times than not, I'm walking in by myself, and I'm, an older woman going into this store. Jeff, Jennifer, certainly Mayor, thank you so much for your ongoing leadership. Councilman Todd, thank you. Food deserts do exist. We've been struggling in a food desert in New Bohemia literally for years. And we've just now gotten to the tipping point where we can put a grocery store in that area. They do exist. And it's important that people have the ability to get to healthy, good food and prescriptions. And part of that is that walkable community. Can we walk there to get there? If you go to the First Avenue Hy-Vee, you will see people walking. The most important thing about that is they might make multiple trips. If you don't have transportation, you're not going to be carrying lots of bags of groceries. You're not. So you're going to have to be able to walk to get multiple trips of your food, because you just can't carry all of that while you're walking. So while we may be able to provide transportation, it's going to be important to remember that a lot of these people require multiple trips during a week to get what they need. To say I'm sad is an understatement. To say I'm disappointed is certainly right in there. Mayor, you are absolutely right in saying this was an unexpected emergency, especially to those friends and neighbors with limited transportation options. Think about it during the winter months. This is a travesty. It's a travesty. I watched the news the other night when all this came down, and there was a man there who had a prosthetic leg, and he was on a walker. He said, I live 2 blocks from here. This is the only place I can get my prescriptions. With tears in his eyes, he said, I don't know how I'm going to be able to navigate getting what I need. And certainly a lot of these people with limited incomes cannot afford hopping online, right, to get their groceries delivered to them. Jeff and Jennifer, Mayor, Dale, whatever you can do, you have my full support. This is about people. This is about a human element, and what's missing here is the compassion. You've got my full support. Anything you need, please reach out. Happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's Councilmember Meyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just had a couple of follow-up questions. Can you provide some additional context about the highly concerned about the neighborhood? When you hear about Hy-Vee, it's underperforming their financial targets. So that's the first time I've heard anything that relates to the neighborhood. And I don't know if they've shared anything about what their concerns are. And if nothing comes to mind, that's fine.
That's fine. I think, and I'll let Jennifer go into more detail. They did, when we met with the Hy-Vee representatives, they just mentioned they wanted to be in a neighborhood that I guess they saw as being more vibrant. I mean, I don't know what the definition of that is exactly, but they did talk about, what is the city, what are your plans to get this kind of the stimulation of the community in this area going? What are your expectations, what's coming on in the future that would help, I would guess, drive more business, more vitality, more commerce that would help their store. And that's why, we worked on listening to them and putting this action plan together, in addition to a number of other investments that the city has made. So it's not just, planning is absolutely vital and critical to getting things started. But as we mentioned in the presentation, there are several projects that are already underway that involve housing that are going to bring people to a store like Hy-Vee. Jennifer, why don't you add to that?
You really summed it up very well. Again, it has been a big focus of ours because, again, we want to listen and make sure we're addressing that. So I think we've been working on many projects, but bringing those together and really showing everyone everything we've done in the study area, again, was really our way of making sure that we were communicating that.
Thank you for that. So it had more to do with vitality and growing the neighborhood, not at least a lot of discussions about crime or theft in the store.
It had to do, as you said initially, with,
Okay.
with the vitality of the neighborhood.
Thank you for that. The second thing is, has the city been provided a copy of the lease agreement?
I do not believe we have that.
Yeah, and I doubt, just to interject, I doubt they'll ever share a copy of a lease agreement. The only way we would get a copy of a lease agreement if there came a point in time when we entered into a development agreement with Hy-Vee or some other entity for that site, then we can ask to see what the lease agreement looks like.
Yeah.
But until then, they're going to keep that internal.
I just wanted to add, so, that agreement was between Hy-Vee and this third
Yeah.
with the landlord,
Correct.
the third party. Interestingly, and this doesn't impact this discussion as far as I know, but that group, and I mentioned this individual, Horvath, and others that we talked to and met with, they have sold the property. So there is a new owner as of January of '24, and we'll also make contact with that group. But as far as, the exact terms of, the 5 years, what a cancellation provision might have been, what are the, ways that someone such as Hy-Vee could get out of an agreement, or do they continue to pay for the 5 years? We just don't have that information.
Yeah, and that's really where I was going with that question about what non-compete clauses are there for that space.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm, responding in this manner, but we are going to talk to Hy-Vee. One of the things, and I mentioned we'll have a number of things on the table when we talk to them, ways we can help what will be their past customers and community. But also, we want to make sure that another grocery store can go in that location, because we do have experience, and Councilmember Scott Olson is very familiar with this kind of agreement, where they might try to, and I'm not saying they will, but keep out a similar entity. So if Hy-Vee, had the original lease, and did they attempt to negotiate something that says another grocery store shall not be there? I have no idea if that's the case. I hope it isn't, but we will talk to Hy-Vee about that to make sure that they will allow that and respect that as we attempt to, encourage something similar. Thank you.
Your Honor, can I just, Councilman Meyer's question about the neighborhood, I would just interject this point. When we did the original deal with Hy-Vee, part of it was to revitalize the entire area, okay? And we did do some things, but at the same time, it's an inner city neighborhood with some challenges, and then we get hit by the flood. And once we got hit by the flood, then, you had 10 square miles of the core displaced, and we were unable to do some of the things that we wanted to do to stabilize it. At the same time, though, when you look at what grocery stores look like, which is traffic with First Avenue, you still have one of the most popular corners in Iowa right there. And when we sat down with them back in May, those concerns that we were certainly sensitive to were concerns that we certainly think the city is very easy to step up to and address. The crime issues, you have more crime and shoplifting at some of the other stores than you do at First Avenue. All those urban myths that Councilwoman Poe talked about, they're out there, and we can address those quite readily. That is if we had a willing partner that wanted to do that with us. And that part of the equation simply didn't happen.
Just to add, have to be careful, is that the retail market and national chains, they change direction all the time. And we're not going to change that. So what we have to do is make sure we don't beat this thing to death and make it more difficult for us to find a replacement service. As I was sitting here on the KCRG, just popped up. Red Lobster just closed a store in Council Bluffs and Waterloo. And I don't think they're looking at the Cedar Rapids one, but they even closed the one in Honolulu. And so, you know, there's changes going. There's thousands and thousands of stores that close every year, but there's also thousands and thousands of stores that reopen. Unfortunately, the biggest issue is going to be finding a type of national chain that is looking and expanding in Iowa. And we have a couple, I think, possibilities of that. But you know, the markets are changing. We've got to understand that, and then we have to determine, as happened in Time Check, do we open our own grocery stores tied with nonprofits, or do we have those other kinds of things happen? I've got some former Casey's properties that we can't put a convenience store back in. They limit what you can put back in, which we don't know whether they have this. But the Hy-Vee on Council Street closed 2 years ago. They're still paying on that big lease over there. And they say they don't want another grocery store in there. So as long as they have their lease, they can keep a grocery store out of that space. So it happens all the time. And so there's a lot of side issues here. So what we're trying to do is find a way to do what's best, whether at the national level or at the local level, to replace the loss of this part. But as all of us know, the pandemic had a dramatic impact on this, because a lot of the people that got benefits in those lower income neighborhoods, that money isn't there anymore. So they can't spend as much money. Grocery costs are up. And so the amount of sales is dropping, and there's nothing we can do about that. That's big time stuff. So how do we make something that's viable? It may not be as big. It may not be as other things, and that's why Quick Star is doing so well. They have a great food section, and a lot of people stop there now for food, and it's fresh, and they grow their own stuff. And so that's why Quick Star is doing so well, is because they provide food. And so I think that it's just a change in the market, and there's not much we're going to do with Hy-Vee. They're expanding all over the country. They're not expanding here. They bought 3 sites for Fresh Market, didn't build a single store in this metro area. They bought a site on Council Street, out there on the Council Street, selling that property. So they're changed, and we're not going to change the corporate status of Hy-Vee. So what we need to do is to do a transition so that we find somebody that will provide that service, hopefully, whether it's at the national level or locally. So I think the important thing is we all have to understand the world is changing, the type of retailers are changing. There's a lot of, I'm working, I'm not going to say who it is, but with 2 facilities now where there's national leases. They've closed those businesses. And so they're still paying their lease and a high rate of lease, and it's happening all over the city in different types of businesses, not just food. So we just got to adapt to that and find out what's best for this neighborhood and how we can make a difference. If you read the Des Moines Register, which I do every morning, Des Moines Hy-Vee has almost failed, the big downtown one in Court Avenue. And they had to restructure the store, didn't work, and so they almost closed that one. But the big difference is they still have their TIF being paid. And so the city threatened them that we're going to cut that TIF off if you close that store. So they just renegotiated their hours. So it's not just happening in Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, happening in downtown Des Moines, which is booming with they got a lot more people living downtown. And if that happens there, it's a difference. And part of that same story was they showed the head person that runs all the theater stuff down there sitting in a restaurant downtown. And the place seated 100, and there's only 6 having lunch because all the office workers have left downtown. And so the restaurants are struggling. So we just need to, it's a changing world. Good news is Cedar Rapids is doing well. Great community, and I think we have the skill set and the talents to make the change. We just have to be a little careful on how we approach that so that we don't get a reputation that we're going to pick on companies that change direction. And so I just have to be sensitive to it. I'm positive that we can make something happen. And so, because we have the ability to do that, we've done that before, so we just got to go out and do it. And so,
Yep, I have no doubt we will.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Councilman Olson. I'll just round us out here. Took us a little longer than we expected. It's okay, though. This, again, and it's an emergency situation. As I shared with Hy-Vee leadership yesterday in what was a enlightening phone call, I suppose I could share offline, off the record with some folks who are interested. I'm not interested in doing that here. I think it's safe to say they know a little bit more about the store that they closed and the city in which they closed it in after this phone call. As I shared with them, the question was really never about their books or their financials. I don't want to know their books. I think it's safe to say we know we wouldn't have given them the incentives to come there if we thought, if huge profits were really the goal at the end of this. I think we wouldn't have provided them the incentive. So from a business standpoint, I don't want to know their books. What upset me specifically about this was the lack of consideration in letting us mitigate the challenges that were going to be dealt us. And in no uncertain terms, I said, your challenges became our challenges in a 45-minute time period. I don't like that. I don't think you should like that. I think our community deserves more. This is the second largest employer in the state in the city, that has, without a doubt, through its employee ownership, by the way, and its donations, contributed a ton. I don't have the exact number, but significant amounts to those certain nonprofits and opportunities in our community. And unfortunately, as I shared with them, there's a stain on that due to the way that this was handled. It was well received by the folks that I spoke to. They appreciated understanding that this is not about their books, this is not about their business, this is about how this was handled. And now I assured them that there would be an opportunity, and they were receptive to that, to prove themselves to us again, to just remind us of who they are when they have our neighbors on the sides of their trucks, for heaven's sakes. They were very receptive to being a part of this solution. And so I have gone from the stages of grief, I don't know exactly what they are, but from the shock that we felt to the absolute anger that we felt to now it's just action. Now it's really just a solution. And so grateful to council commitment and leadership. And by the way, members of our community who have come out in full force to support, whether it's, folks at Matthew 25 saying, is a nonprofit consortium an answer? To those who literally have relationships at other local grocery store operations as well as national, to our city manager's personal relationships. We will find a solution. That I do know. So we're gonna need to, as a community, move past that ugliness, for lack of a better word, because I'm not going to pretend. I mean, when I use the word abandon us, I actually meant it, and I reinforced that with leadership. That's exactly how I felt, and I think how that neighborhood felt. We have got to move beyond that, to that place of hope, to that place of solution, and we are on it. And I appreciate you for the update, and I know council staff is always willing and will be keeping us updated weekly on the progress. Thank you. Now we move on to public hearings, so I'll remind everybody who wishes to speak today, whether during a public comment period or one of our two public comment periods that we offer, a few matters to make sure we keep things orderly here. Remain at the lectern. If you have documents you need to share, please share them with the officer. She will make sure that we get them. Second, comments are always limited to 5 minutes, so you'll see a yellow light turn on. That means you have 1 minute left, and when it's red, we ask you to take your seat again. And please be aware that all comments need to be directed to the matter of the specific public hearing, and abusive, personal, loud, threatening, or irrelevant comments are not allowed. So we need to hold an orderly hearing, so we ask that no applause, cheering, booing, or any interference from the audience be a part of this. So we thank you in advance. Does the clerk have any written comments or objections in regard to any of the items on our agenda today?
Your Honor, there were no written comments or objections filed. Thank you.
We will move along then to item number 1, which is a public hearing to consider the Cedar Rapids Transit Fiscal Year 2025 Consolidated Transit Funding Application to the Iowa Department of Transportation for federal and state transit funding assistance. And Director Brad DeBrouwer is here, and I'll recognize you, Brad.
Good afternoon. So this is our annual application to the Iowa DOT for both state and federal transit funding assistance. This year's application will include both operating assistance as well as capital projects. For operating assistance, we are requesting federal Section 5307 dollars in the amount of $4,139,000, as well as state transit assistance at $749,000. Those two funding sources will go directly to our day-to-day fixed route service. The federal Section 5310 dollars, the $219,000 that we're requesting, will go to support our ADA paratransit contract with Linn County Lifts. As far as capital projects, we will be requesting funding to replace 2 heavy-duty buses for the fixed route service and 1 light-duty bus for the ADA paratransit service. And that is all, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. This is a time and a place for public hearing on this matter. Does anyone here wish to address council? All right, let the record show a public hearing has been held with no objections for the record. Council comments for consideration? All right, moving right along, seeing no further questions, the adoption of the resolution has been moved by Poe, seconded by Overland. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. And this motion carries. Thank you. Item number 2 is a public hearing to consider the proposed plan, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the FCS Ellis Lane Northwest Levee and Ellis Park Fueling Station Improvements Project. This has an estimated cost of $8,040,000. Rob Davis is here, and Rob, I'll recognize you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, Rob Davis with the Public Works Department. This project is a very important project. In fact, it's our first major project in the Northwest neighborhood, so I'm very pleased to bring forward this flood control project. It includes earth and levee, street, sidewalk, parking lot, water main, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and a fueling station replacement. That's the first one for us on the flood system. On the maps here on the lower left, this is looking from west to east. This is Ellis Boulevard. Here I have the cursor, and we'll actually be working on this area just to the west of Ellis. This will be the first of multiple phase project. The picture on the right is looking from Ellis Park from north to south. I'm going to walk through just a couple phases of this, different components, excuse me. As I said, it's a multi-phase project. Phase 1 will be setting up for the up and over the levee. We will construct a perpendicular levee to the flow of water between Ellis Park and basically where Ellis Lane is now. Traffic on Ellis Boulevard will be maintained at all times. There may be some minor lane closures for private utility work, and access to Ellis Park will be maintained at all times. There may be some parking adjustments, or there will be some parking adjustments, but the ball fields will be fully accessible. The phase 2 will actually be the part that shifts Ellis Boulevard from its current alignment, as I'm tracing the right alignment here, up and over the levee, and then we'll actually build a wall to cut off where Ellis is. Ellis Boulevard is here right now. That will allow us the opportunity to build a flood system without any gates here. Gates are expensive and they're maintenance. This will be just a road that gently goes up and over the levee and comes back down, and we can close it by simply putting some barricades up there. Some of the other features of this project: Q Avenue Northwest will be reconstructed from 8th Street to Ellis Boulevard. There's a picture depicting that here. This is necessary to remove and replace to accommodate a major storm sewer line that will be taking water from our detention basin that we'll be building. to a future pump station. Parking in front of Pearson's Flower Shop and greenhouses will be converted to angle parking. And the street, this is the only block of seal coat on an entire Q Avenue that will be paved concrete, so we'll take care of that at the same time. Paving for Progress will be assisting in the upgrade of that road. And then another major one here is the canopy and fueling station. The city has 2 fueling stations, one at the City Services Center, the other one at the Ellis Park here. The underground fuel tanks are at the end of their lifespan. The DNR requires them to be replaced. We will have them removed and then replaced with above-ground storage tanks, a new canopy, and fueling pumps there. And then lastly, as trees are important, the derecho, this project will be putting 48 trees back in accordance with the city's relief program. As the mayor mentioned, the cost opinion is $8,040,000. The funding source is actually put together with 3 sources. City Council allocated $10 million of American Rescue Plan dollars to this project. In addition, for the fueling station, the majority of that will come with general obligation bonds. And then the Q Avenue, as I mentioned before, that also has some paving for progress. The part associated with the storm sewer will be covered by the ARPA or American Rescue Plan dollars, and the paving for progress will pay the balance. So this is a good opportunity where we consolidated multiple funding sources to solve a lot of problems at the same time. The bid opening is currently scheduled for May 22nd. Start date would be July 15th, subject to acceptable bids, and we would complete the project schedule as end of 2025. And with that, Public Works recommends approval of the plans and specs for this project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob. This is a time and a place for public hearing on this matter. Does anyone here wish to address council? Let the record show a public hearing has been held with no objections for the record. Council? Councilmember Poe.
Thank you. I'm real excited about this section being done, Rob. I couldn't agree with you more. This section is absolutely critical to protecting the entire west side, because in 2008, we put up, as you may remember, some earthen levee that did not hold because the water was so fierce coming through the park. And this will, who wants gates when you can have a levee like this? So I think this is going to be great, and I appreciate knowing where the levee's going to go. I took a look at what you included in the packet, and this is a lot easier to understand than that is. So that was going to be my one question to you, was just laying out the levee, which you have done. So thank you for your work on this. This is a critical piece to protecting our entire community. I think people kind of forget that the flood control system has got to work in concert with each other. All these pieces have to work together in order to protect the community. And while this may not seem as a big piece, watching the water flow through there in 2008, I can guarantee you it is. So thank you so much. Appreciate the work.
Councilmember Todd.
Speaking of pieces, Mr. Davis, my good friend, what are we doing with the Softball Hall of Fame building?
Oh.
Well, the Softball Hall of Fame building will be a separate project, and
But
we can,
is it in that picture?
it's over,
In that top view?
it's just the left side of this drawing outside the flood zone. It'll be at the, off of the parking lot up here, the site, there's a site right here, you can kind of see the trees. That's the Softball Hall of Fame location.
And just so council, because of the flood control system,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to move that thing somehow. But thank you, that's all I needed.
That would be a good call for action for citizens who may be listening. Always looking for private partners to support that. There you go, never missing an opportunity. Councilmember Hager.
Rob, is the fueling station where the maintenance building is at? Or where's the fueling station located today, and is it going to stay in the same spot?
It's at the same spot. The fueling station, the equipment will, like the tanks will be in this green spot here,
And
so.
it'll be out-of-ground tanks?
Above ground tanks?
Above ground, yeah.
Yeah, above ground tanks. It's easier to monitor them that way.
Be out of the floodplain.
Absolutely. This is well above the 100-year flood.
Thank you so much, Rob. One last thought here regarding the business Pearson's there. I'm assuming you've got the regular notifications about traffic. It looks like this will be a long process here that's going to affect them.
Yes, we coordinated the start of this construction project, in fact, with them, which their busiest time is probably this month right now. So even the start of the construction with July through the end of the year, as that phase on Q Avenue was coordinated with Pearson's.
Excellent. Okay. And once again, flood protection in plain sight. So thank you for your creativity.
And I would just echo, I didn't say this during the presentation, this was the first location to fail on the west side in 2008. So this is very important, just because of that reason.
Thank you so very much. All right, if there's nothing else, the adoption of the resolution has been moved by Todd, seconded by Hager. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. And this motion carries. Thank you. Item number 3 is a public hearing to consider the proposed plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the 9th Avenue Southeast improvements from 3rd Street to Railroad project. This has an estimated cost of $380,000. Doug Wilson is here. Doug, I'll recognize you.
Thank you, Mayor. Doug Wilson, Public Works Department. This project consists of pavement removal and replacement, water main and storm sewer improvements, along with new sidewalk and new curb and gutter. The project is being done in coordination with the redevelopment of the Lost Leftist lumber site. As the mayor said, the engineer's opinion of probable cost is $380,000. This project is funded with tax increment finance funds. The bid letting is scheduled for May 22nd, 2024, and subject to receipt of acceptable bids. We expect the project to start in July of 2024 and be completed in October. The Public Works Department recommends approval of the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. This is a time and a place for a public hearing on this matter. Does anyone in the audience wish to address council? Let the record show a public hearing has been held with no objections for the record. Council? All right, seeing no comments, we'll show the adoption of the resolution has been moved by Meyer, seconded by Councilmember Tyler Olson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. And this motion carries. Thank you, Council. Item number 4 is a public hearing held to consider the proposed plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the WPCF Process Improvements Contract 2 project. This has an estimated cost of $277,500,000. Roy Hessman is here to talk about that. Roy.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, council members. Roy Hessman, Utilities Director. Water Pollution Control Facility was originally built in the late 1970s and put online in 1980. This picture shows the plant layout as originally constructed. 80% of the plant was funded with grant money following the passing of the Clean Water Act of 1972. WPC serves all of Cedar Rapids as well as Marion, Hiawatha, Robbins, Palo, and a small portion of Lynn County, a population base of approximately 180,000. This facility is rather unique since we do not require industry to pre-treat their waste to low domestic strength levels. In essence, we are an industrial wastewater plant owned and operated by the City of Cedar Rapids. By treating the high-strength waste, we treat the equivalent organic loadings of a city of 1.9 million people. WPC has undergone many changes and upgrades throughout the last 44 years. Anaerobic pretreatment was added in 1990 to provide more organic treatment capacity when a new industry was looking to make Cedar Rapids their home. Other projects such as additional clarifiers, lime stabilization, ash lagoons, and disinfection upgrades have been included over the years to meet a growing need within the community. Nearly 16 years ago, the flood of 2008 inundated the plant, causing significant damage to the facility. FEMA assistance allowed short and long-term needed repairs to be performed and bought us time to plan for the project we bring before you today. Through separate FEMA funding, the plant is now protected from flooding to a level 3 foot above the 2008 flood height. Flood recovery work was declared finished in October 2014 when we held the ribbon cutting for the flood wall and pump station. Flood recovery gave us a wonderful opportunity to evaluate the entire plant infrastructure and plan for the replacement of items approaching their useful end of life. For the past 9 years, we have looked at different processes, technologies, and infrastructure at other facilities around the country. We have worked hand in hand with our design team to make sure we utilize the best technology available while keeping rates reasonable for our customers. We have met with our industries and adjoining communities, discussing financing options, rate structures, and business impacts with our stakeholders. And prior to starting this project, repaired portions of the plant that needed to be performed in order to keep the plant operational during the construction of this project. After much research and planning, WPC's future will incorporate the following major processes. Aerobic granular sludge basins, which allow organic waste processing in a much smaller footprint. The construction of anaerobic digesters, where we will have better destruction of biomass and the generation of biogas from all the waste entering the plant, not just a portion. The biogas will be captured, scrubbed, and sold as a renewable natural gas, or RNG. Other improvements include various civil improvements, utilities modifications, and additional backup generation capacity. Our goal has always been to provide cost-effective, reliable treatment of industrial and residential wastewater to support our region's economy. WPC is an economic driver for the entire community, and this project will provide the resources to support our existing industry and attract new industry while being good stewards of the environment. Some key points of this project include the replacement of processes and infrastructure that has reached the end of its useful life. It will capture the biogas from all the wastewater entering